I want to welcome people back to another Zoom interview. My guest today is Shane Gower, who is a teacher at Maranacook Community High School. And welcome, Shane.
Thank you. Thank you.
And where are you coming to us from?
I teach at Maranacook Community High School in Reedfield, and that's where I am right now.
Okay, right in your classroom?
In my classroom, yeah.
And you just have so much for us to see behind you. Anything in particular that stands out that you want to talk to us about?
Well, it's not quite in the frame yet, but I do have a bobblehead.
And I know you have quite a collection, don't you, of bobbleheads?
Okay. I have several, yeah.
Will you be able to pan down at some point so that we can see all the other ones?
Well, actually, my other bobbleheads have not been unpacked yet.
Oh, okay.
I haven't come up with a great strategy because of the way that we're doing like cleaning and stuff.
Oh, yes. You don't want to have too much stuff to clean.
Yeah.
Margaret made it, or she just come out for today?
Just for today, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And eventually the other ones will too. The kids have been asking, so I got to find a way to get them. I just have to rethink like what's behind me, I guess, to a certain extent.
Okay. Very good. Well, we'll talk more about what teaching is like in a pandemic as we move on. But I wanted to start out by letting people know how you first became connected to the Margaret Chase Smith Library.
Yeah, when I was not too long ago, but I guess it really was a long time ago, when I was doing my student teaching at the University of Maine in Farmington, I did student teaching with Mount Blue Middle School, and they did a field trip to the Margaret Chase Smith Library, and I knew about Margaret Chase Smith. I'd heard, and actually, when I was little, she was at something that I was at. Like I saw her from a distance or something. So I had known about her, but I didn't know much of anything about the library and the museum. We came on a field trip, and students came and they did some work there. I forget exactly what they did, but you and I chatted and kind of talked about some of the stuff at the library. And when I got a job the next year, I reached back out and we made a field trip ourselves. So.
All right. So I have been here for 24 years, and I was thinking it's probably been at least 20 years you've been coming. Can you pinpoint it a little more?
Yeah, I think so. It wasn't my first year. I reached out to you my first year, but it wasn't my first year that I came. It was the following year, and this is my 23rd year. So
okay. So it has been over 20 years then.
Yeah.
Although unfortunately we got disrupted earlier this year, so the last academic year, because you usually come in March.
Yeah.
And I think you had already set the date, but it fell after the cancellation.
Yeah, and in fact, I had already gotten a confirmation, that the bus was ready, or that kind of thing.
Yeah, we wound up closing in mid-March. When did you get sent home?
March 13th was our last student day in person.
Okay.
So it was that weekend. I think that's Sunday night when they notified everybody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to do here is a share screen. And I actually used this picture a couple weeks ago when I spoke with Abby Dupre, who is seated at the far left of this picture, diligently doing research in a scrapbook. And there you are standing right next to her and another student with another teacher.
Yep.
Yeah. So give people an idea of what you have the students, why you want them to have this experience of coming to the Margaret Chase Smith Library, what you have them do.
Yeah, so what the kids are doing there, and what I have them do, is they are going through some of those primary source case studies. I guess they're grouped by case studies. They're copies of the original primary source documents, and they are going through looking at the primary source documents, and they're looking for a theme. They're looking for some way to connect 3 or 4 or 5, in some cases, primary source documents. Because one of the things that kids do, it's my AP class, AP US History class that I brought. One of the things in the AP exam is they have to write an essay, what's called a DBQ, which is a document-based question. So they get a prompt question, and they get 7 primary source documents, and they have to use those primary source documents when they write the essay. So students have spent a lot of time, and they actually even do it before they come to me, looking at primary source documents and then using them to write an essay. So the thought here is we're kind of twisting it a little bit, and they are kind of reverse engineering it. So they're creating the DBQ. They're looking through primary source documents and looking what would be a good question to unite or bring together these primary source documents in a way in which someone who was going to write an essay would then be able to show how these documents give some kind of understanding about something in history.
Mm-hmm. My recollection is that one of the reasons you tend to come in the springtime is that usually is about the time you're covering the Cold War period.
Yeah.
Which so many of the documents, they relate to Margaret Chase Smith's career, political career, which is from 1940 to 1973. But so many of the meaty documents are from that Cold War era of the 1950s and 1960s. And as you say, it hopefully it helps them prepare for the AP US History course, doing the exam, which they have to do the essay question, the document-based question. So you're teaching AP US History currently?
Yes. Yep.
And how many students do you have?
So there's two classes, two sections.
Okay. So you split up all of American history into two separate years?
No, we do it all in 1 year.
Oh, but you just have so many students, you have to have two classes. Gotcha.
Yeah, I have 48 students.
Wow.
Yeah, which is the largest I've ever had in 1 year for AP US History.
48, is it open to any class, or is it mostly upperclassmen?
It's all juniors.
All juniors, 48
Yep.
juniors. What's the size of the junior class?
About 100.
So about half of your juniors are taking your AP US History class.
Yeah.
Wow. 24 is a lot for a class. Yeah.
I mean, and of course, with the restrictions we currently have in place, I don't actually have them all at once. So half of them are at home, and then half of them are here, and then they switch, basically.
So it's almost like you have 4 classes of 12.
It is, although not to get too complicated with the schedule, but I actually only have the one class right now split in half. The other class will start in November.
I see.
And then the one I have now will take a break.
Oh, interesting. That sounds very complicated.
It's a little complicated. The benefit to it, though, for students and also for teachers a little bit too, is that they only have 3 classes at once to focus.
I see. So you're sort of like doing the units rather than like spread it out over a semester. You're doing more compact units.
Yeah, I mean, basically what the kids have is they have, like, prior to this, we would have Monday would be 4 classes, Tuesday would be a different 4 classes. So they have 8 total classes over 2 days. And we just got rid of the Tuesday for now. So every day is just 4 classes, and most kids take 3, and they have a study hall the other period. And then in November, we switched to the other day, basically.
Okay. So how is that working out so far?
I like it a lot. For social studies, I think it works great. History and our subject area. And I actually think it works well, to be honest, for almost all the subjects, in my opinion. I mean, I'm not a specialist in the other disciplines. Some people don't like it. They get concerned about kids carrying over knowledge and skills. If you take a break from the class for a while, and it would be hard to recover some of that the longer it goes. And I think that you can do it in a way so that it's not too long in between. So therefore, it doesn't have as big of a negative effect. Because it would definitely be a concern. I mean, you could do it the way that I'm talking about. And for example, as a kid as a 9th grader might take a class that ends at the end of December, and then they wouldn't take like part 2 of that class in theory until literally a year later. It might happen in the schedule that way, but you can tailor the schedule to make sure that doesn't happen. So,
do you have a sense yet of how the students feel about the new schedule?
They like it and they don't like it. I think they like the idea of only having 3 classes to focus on.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because of the way our schedule is, typically for a lot of kids, one day is like a hard day and one day is like an easy day.
Okay.
Which when you have, Monday, Tuesday, one day's easy, one day's hard, not a big deal. But when the first 9 weeks are all the easy day, and the next 9 weeks are all the hard day, that's the part that, so kids whose schedules are more imbalanced, they're not super excited about it.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
And are you far enough into it this year, or even the carryover from last year, to have a sense of what the quality of the teaching is? One teacher told me that they feel like they can only get sort of through 3/4 of what they would normally do because of all these restrictions and the way things are reorganized.
Yeah. So also our periods are shorter too.
Yeah.
So yeah, because of the cleaning and the disinfecting and the stuff that we have to do. Yeah, I mean, the College Board for AP classes has not changed the curriculum,
Mm-hmm.
and so they're expecting us to have the same material, the same amount of U.S. history. We've tried to get creative with finding ways to build in more time for the AP classes. So some of the kids will actually, I don't want to get too complex in the schedule, but they will be doing like before and after these periods of time, they will be doing like independent work to continue forward to try to make up for that.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for that, there's no way I'd be able to cover the curriculum that the College Board wants us to with the time that we have.
Yeah. No, I know with AP U.S. history, sometimes one of the ways schools handle it, because even with a regular schedule, there's a lot of content to get through.
Yeah.
So sometimes they would have them read books over the summer. Is that something you do?
Yeah, I actually didn't do it this summer just because of what was happening and the inability really to connect with all the kids in a way to give them the materials. But typically I have. Yeah, typically I've had them do some I've varied it up over the years, but I've had them at one time read a book, but I've also had them at one time do some reading from the textbook. For the AP class, they're required to read from the textbook. So sometimes I've done that kind of in the beginning to get them jump started. So I didn't happen to this year. I wish I had been able to, but typically I do.
How are the connectivity issues? Is yours a district where people have good connection, or is that an issue?
I think we have pretty good. The families and the community have been able to. The school district has worked hard to work with the families to help them get connected. So I think we've done a pretty good job. Part of it is out of our hands. It's out of everybody's hands, and that is there are just some parts of our district, relatively small, but there are some areas where cell service is not there, and there's no fiber optics. There's no wiring there.
Right.
So it's been a little bit tricky. It's a small number, but it's been a little bit tricky. And I know they've been working with the companies to try to find ways to help them. But it's definitely still an issue.
Where are you right now in AP US history?
Today we were talking about the Revolutionary period and looking at Paul Revere's Boston Massacre woodcut, the image, the famous drawing, cartoon-like image, political cartoon-like, and analyzing that today and talking about propaganda and some of the issues around the Sons of Liberty and perspective. That's one of the themes in AP US history, is being able to analyze perspective and talking about the British perspective versus the colonist perspective.
And how was that conducted today? Did you have some kids in the classroom?
Yeah, so I used Zoom like we're doing right now, and I had kids at home, and I projected and shared my screen with the kids in the classroom and the kids at home at the same time of the Paul Revere, the Boston Massacre famous image. And then we used a question formulation technique, QFT. Students generate questions, and then we kind of go through a little process to narrow down the questions, then have a discussion about questions that we see in the image. Which really leads to some interesting observations, things that a lot of people don't normally see in that image. Things like, for example, it says butcher's block above the British soldiers, and it's the only wording that you can see in the whole image. And students wonder, was that done on purpose to try to send a message about the British soldiers being like butchers? Stuff like that. So it's pretty cool.
And you're having to teach with a mask on?
Yeah. Yep.
And they have masks as well?
They do have masks, yeah.
And they're spread out through the room?
Yeah, we can fit when this building was built in 1976, I don't think they designed it well, to be honest, but unfortunately, there's not a huge space. So I can only get, meeting the CDC guidelines, we can only fit 15 desks in the room. And as we were saying earlier, the classes, in theory, would be 24, 25 students in a class, which they'd be a little tight, but I could fit them in without the guidelines. So it presents a bit of a challenge to be able to have them all at once, but we have the 15 desks, they're spread out, and they wear the masks.
And I think you talked about this at the beginning. Is it sort of your mind have to be on two tracks because half your audience is right before you and half of them are on a screen?
Yeah, it does some crazy things to your brain. I feel like I'm starting to get used to it a little bit. But yes, it's almost like if anyone's ever tried to talk on the phone and then talk to somebody in person at the same time. Like, I don't know if anyone's ever tried to do that, but if you've ever been on the phone having a conversation and also with somebody in person, like talking to both those people at the same time, it feels almost the same way. And when you think about it, you think, oh, it wouldn't be any different. But for some reason it is. There's something different about having those two different conversations at the same time that does something weird in your brain. And it's really exhausting, actually.
Can the students in the classroom, is it the Zoom projected so that they can see the other students?
It can be. I mean, sometimes I've done that, like I've said to the students, I'm going to project you guys. But not typically, because if I need them to interact with each other, which we've done, then I'll have the kids in the room also get on the Zoom.
Okay.
And then they can see them on their own laptop.
I got you. Okay. Very good.
We've done that. And there are things you can do on Zoom. You can do something called breakout rooms, and that sends them into small groups. So I've done that with, there'll be one kid in the room and two who are at home in the same breakout room. Or something like that, and then they have and they wear headphones so that they don't disrupt each other, but they can still talk. And it's kind of interesting to watch. They're on their laptops, headphones, and then randomly they say things because they're talking to somebody on the laptop. So it's a little different from the way we've done things in the past, for sure.
Well, it's a grand experiment, and hopefully it's going well for you.
I got to say, I think it's gone better than I thought it might.
Okay.
Having said that, it's still really, really exhausting, and there are still things where I'm like, oh, and it just doesn't quite work the way I wanted it to. And it took several times of doing these breakout rooms and stuff like that, and having it fail before we were sort of like, okay, I guess I'll do it differently next time. So,
So what made you decide to become a social studies teacher?
Let's see. A couple of different things. I think I always had an interest in history. And when I was like, I don't know, 13, maybe 12, 13, my dad wanted to go. So kind of a long story short, there was a story in my family that his mother's grandfather in the Civil War was taken prisoner and died in Libby prison. And he had heard that during World War II, her brother had gone, was stationed near there and had gone to see, and there was an A. Avery carved in the wall at the old Libby prison. And so my dad was always interested in the Civil War for this reason, and wanted to, go to Gettysburg. So we went to Gettysburg, and I was just blown away, fascinated with, had no idea what to expect when I got there. And I just did not believe how big it was, how much history there was there. And I just had never been exposed to anything like that. And it really got me thinking, like, a huge interest in history in school after that. I was in 7th grade. So, it just kind of came naturally, something that I felt like I didn't need to work at because I was interested, and it came naturally. And wanted to be a history major when I went off to college, and somehow made my way into education, I guess.
And you said earlier you went to the University of Maine at Farmington for your...
I did. I actually started at Orono. I went to UMaine Orono first, and then I transferred. And I started as a history major. Not really sure exactly what I was going to do with that.
Okay. So you didn't go to college thinking I'm going to become a teacher?
No, I didn't. No, I knew it was an option. It wasn't. I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. I wasn't even 100% sure I wanted to study history. I just thought I would start with that, and then maybe I'd figure it out.
Mhm.
and I just stayed with it.
Do you have a favorite era of history?
I do. um,
It is?
it's the two world wars,
Okay.
and it's become kind of a passion of mine, like a personal passion of mine.
Hmm.
I've always found an interest in it for whatever reason, and it's just really become like really a passion, an area of passion for me. I read when I read stuff, it's from that time period for the most part, and it's the whole period, not just the military part, but I mean just that time period, that 30-year time period. I've
Hmm.
always found to be interesting.
I know you've done quite a bit and in that area. And I guess one of the ways to approach it is you have another connection to the library in that you've been someone who's done a lot of work with the National History Day program,
Yep.
which John Taylor here at the Margaret Chase Smith Library is the state coordinator for it.
Yeah.
So you've had students who participated in the program.
I have. Can you hear that?
I can hear that.
Sorry, just a reminder that we're in a school. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Sorry, what was the last part? She was.
That you've had students who have participated in the National History Day program in Maine.
Yes. Yep.
Uh,
Yeah, and I've had a couple of students who have been able to finish first in the state contest and have gone on to Washington D.C. and participated in the national contest.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been really fortunate to work with folks at the National History Day level to part of their summer programs for teachers, where we went in 2016,
Mm-hmm.
a travel trip that was paid for, and we went to Italy and Belgium and France and visited the graves of soldiers who were killed in the Second World War and buried there.
Mm-hmm.
And I researched a soldier from Maine, Harvey Medore of Augusta, Maine, and met his son and his grandson, and went and visited his grave. And then,
where's that located?
at the Epinal American Cemetery, which is near, not too far from Metz in France, kind of not far from the German border.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very small town, so it's not super close to the actual cemetery. Is not super close to anything, but it's maybe an hour from Metz.
Mm-hmm.
And then traveled with them again. I was fortunate. I actually brought a student to Normandy.
Mm-hmm.
And the student and I were selected along with 18 other teams of teachers from around the country. And we went to France and went to Normandy. And this time she did the research on the soldier from Maine, Carl Alexander from Pittsfield. And we visited his grave.
Mm-hmm.
And then I participated with National History Day and the World War I Centennial Commission.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2018 for the centennial, this time it was a World War I soldier. And I had researched Millard Corson from Madison, actually.
Oh, right next door to Gower.
Yeah. And he's buried in the Wazan American Cemetery, which is also kind of in the country. I'm trying to think what it's near. It's not too far from Chateau Thierry,
Mm-hmm.
because we also went at the same time to the big monument that's there from the battle.
So you had the opportunity to go on 3 of these National History Day trips to Europe.
Yeah, I've been fortunate to be selected. You have to go through an application process and all that, and so yeah.
Now, does memory serve me right that out of your research, did you publish a book?
Yeah, I did. I did a book. It was actually from a Teaching American History grant, so it wasn't from that particular research, but it was a little bit earlier, for Teaching American History grant on Lawrence Dysart, who was related to the Dysart family. That everybody kind of knows, Dysart's truck stop and stuff. It's his brother, actually. Okay. And his other brother was the actor who was on...
Richard Dysart.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, from LA Law.
Yeah, yep. And he had a store in Pittsfield for many years called LA Dysart's, and it was like a department store long before Walmart, long before. If anyone knows downtown Pittsfield, it was near the Bijou movie theater. It was right next door. Yeah. And Eisenhower actually, when he came to Pittsfield and before he came to Skowhegan, there's a picture of him like in his car, like waving. Right behind him is Dysart's in the picture. My grandmother had worked for him, and that's kind of how I knew. And she told me all these stories about these things that happened. And then I was able to connect with his daughter, and they had a DVD recording that they had taken from VHS of him telling stories when he was elderly before he died, and they had transferred it to DVD, and she gave me the DVD. So I had these great sources of information to tell stories. But basically, it was the idea. His philosophy was building relationships as a way for economic success. So he did all kinds of things, like during the Depression, where he would allow people to buy things on credit, and he trusted them, but he built a relationship with them. So it wasn't just a stranger, and he felt like they were more likely to pay him back because he had become like a friend of theirs. So anyway, that's kind of what that was about.
Okay. So for any people out there who have this idea that, oh, teachers have it easy, they only teach 180 days a year, you've just talked about the things that you do in addition to your classroom time, teaching American history program, the National History Day program, these trips that you've gone on. I know another thing that you've done a lot of is National Endowment for the Humanities summer programs. It seemed like there was a period there where every summer you were doing a special program.
Yeah, and in theory, I might have done one this past summer, but they, of course, canceled them before they even announced who was selected.
Had you applied for one, or were you looking at one?
I had applied for one. I'd applied for two. One as a backup. You're allowed to apply for two. The one I was really hoping to get into. So the NEH programs, they always pick a landmark. They call them landmarks of American history, and someone near the landmark, and a scholar of some sort, professor, or it could be a museum worker. They will make a proposal, and then it's based on the nearby landmark. And so Hart Mountain in Wyoming, they had an internment camp there during World War II, Japanese American internment. Yeah. And so that was the one that I was really hoping to do. Is kind of my next area of interest that I haven't explored much related to World War II is Japanese American internment. So I was really interested in that. And I'm kind of interested in general in that, and also in German POW camps here in the United States. I had a student a couple of years ago do a project on that, and interviewed a former German POW who was still alive, living in Texas, who just stayed in the U.S. after the war. And one of the things I did this summer was to visit what had been a POW camp near Jackman. Yep. Spencer Lake, I think it's called, or something. They're the remnants there of that. Just
a little south of Jackman.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And I think there were 4 sites in Maine where German POWs were kept. And it's funny you should mention that, because someone was just telling me today, it was actually David Greenham at the Holocaust and Human Rights Center, that they were just offered beds that had been used at one of the prisoner of war camps. I think they were made by Paris Manufacturing in South Paris.
Wow.
And, they don't have the room for them, but apparently the Maine State Museum is going to accept them.
Oh, good. Wow, that's great.
Bunk beds, yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, it's interesting that. Serendipitous that you should mention that.
Yeah.
So that was one you were looking to go to. Tell us about, do you know how many you've participated in altogether?
Probably 6.
Okay. What was your favorite? What stands out to you? Which one?
So it's 2 different ways of looking at it. So the one that I did in California for the gold rush stands out because California, the geography, the environment, the climate is so different. And that really incorporated that because of the nature of what happened with the gold rush. And one of the things they talked about was how mining contributed to some of the issues that are happening in California. So I thought that kind of stood out for that reason, because that's not really something in Maine that we necessarily can see or relate to. And the program was great and all that. They always do a fantastic job with providing scholars and lectures and readings, and also opportunities to create lesson plans and stuff. But thinking more specifically about kind of the takeaways, and maybe a little more like the academic piece that kind of stood out, I think probably it was the one I did at Lowell, Lowell Mills. And like I said, they're all fantastic, but the Lowell Mills was just a little bit better in terms of they just, you have a week, and you want to maximize your time and get a lot out of it. And they do a great job of balancing the time. without making you feel like you're doing too much, but you're definitely getting your money's worth. I mean, it's not your money, but they're getting their money's worth for sure, out of every minute in that program, because they just have a great itinerary. They mix in field trips, they mix in research time, they mix in lesson plan time, and they just do a fantastic job with it. Like I said, they all do great, but that one stands out as a really good one. And I always tell people, the Lowell, if you get a chance to do the Lowell one, do it. And they've been doing it for many, many years. They've been offering it.
And that's part of the National Park Service, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the Songus Industrial Center, Heritage Center, I think. It's also through that too. Yeah.
So it's a place that people can go and visit on their own.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And it's, I would recommend it if you ever get a chance to. Lowell it's been a couple of years now since I've done it, but Lowell is trying to bring itself back to life. And there's kind of an urban renewal happening in Lowell. And this is part of that. And there's some really interesting, cool things to see. The Boot Cotton Mill, they have a floor of the Boot Cotton Mill that is untouched since, 1910 or something like that. And all the machines still run. And it's pretty amazing to think about and go in there and hear and feel the vibration and try to imagine what that would have been like for 12 hours a day. And then also have, which they don't have now, which is a good thing, but to think about having the cotton fibers floating around in the air and breathing that in all day long without any windows or ventilation.
Well, and also the other components you have there is the mill housing and the canal system too. When I went there, I think you could actually take a boat out into the canal. Yeah,
they took us on a tour of the canals in the boat. Yeah, which is also kind of interesting because otherwise it's illegal to go on the canals.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. So what other classes do you teach besides AP US History?
I also teach AP Psychology.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which is a little different. And I teach an ethics class, which is like philosophy, basically. Global philosophy, it's called. And these are all dual enrollment classes with Thomas College.
Oh, okay.
And then I teach a history through film, World War II history through film class, which is also dual enrollment with Thomas College.
Meaning that as your students are taking the class, they're also getting credit towards Thomas College?
Yep.
Do you have any Thomas? Do you have any Thomas College students in them?
No. It's just technically Maranacook is considered a campus of Thomas College technically because of this program, and we have students every year between 5 and 12 usually, who when they graduate they get an associate's degree from Thomas College at the same time.
Very good. Yeah. So another aspect of your history interest in history is you have quite a collection of bobbleheads. How many do you think you have altogether?
I have 4 at home.
Okay.
And I have 6 in my room.
Okay.
So 10.
Now, do you seek them out, or do people give them to you, send them to you because they know that you like bobbleheads?
Yeah, the very first one that I have at home, well, I have 2 at home that are baseball players.
Okay.
And I got them at the Sea Dogs game.
Okay.
And I can't remember how I got the first. I have a Abraham Lincoln at home, and I can't remember how I got that one. But at some point, I brought it to school, and so a student decided to, as a present for whatever reason, get me a bobblehead, and so I had a second one, and then
which one was that?
Alexander Hamilton.
Oh, wow.
And it was right around the time when Hamilton was first coming out and stuff. It was right around that time. And then from there, it just kind of grew. And people started, associating me with bobbleheads a little bit. And so other people either gave them to me, they got them from somewhere, that's how I got the Margaret Chase Smith bobblehead. Yeah, I mean, it's my lights keep going off because if I don't move enough, it's
okay. Yeah, you've had some interesting.
So yeah, that's how I got the bobbleheads.
Okay, very good. Do you have a favorite person, historical figure, apart from bobbleheads?
I don't know that I have a favorite person. I have several that I enjoy learning about and learning more about. But I don't know if they're necessarily a favorite, person, but maybe just I really enjoy learning more about them and find them to be fascinating or interesting, because they are complex figures, and you know, they may have flaws, as we all do, but they have interesting things to learn about them as well.
And who are they?
So I knew you were going to ask that. So one is Teddy Roosevelt.
And you have a Teddy bobblehead.
The Teddy bobblehead. Yep. Another is Alexander Hamilton.
Okay. You got
Abraham
bobblehead
Lincoln.
in too.
Yep.
And you said Lincoln as well?
Lincoln is one. Margaret Chase Smith is another. And anybody connected to my favorite era, like the World Wars era. But Frederick Douglass is probably my favorite, actually. I would say he's my favorite.
Interesting. Very good. So thank you very much for taking the time to speak with me. And I wish you well with the project of trying to teach during a pandemic. And hopefully we can remain connected, even though we have to stay separated.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. You take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.